Greetings, Healthy Voice listeners. I hope this podcast finds you well and that you are having a pretty good summer so far. So August has officially begun, and that means a new theme has started in my Healthy Voice community. You will notice this theme showing up in Substack, YouTube, wherever I share information. I find it easier if I have one theme of the month and then I can create content around that theme. So the theme for August is breaking through. And as always, I choose a vocal technique that can also double up as a metaphor for the healing journey. And so breaking through in this case refers to the passaggio as well as learning how to access high notes and low notes. And what I mean by that is being able to go outside of your comfort zone. So in practical terms, every single person who comes to work with me has a specific range, a specific number of pitches that he or she can easily access. And one of the goals in working together is that I can give them the tools to go both lower and higher comfortably and with ease. In the middle of the range is something known as the passaggio, which is a term that means the bridge between the two vocal registers. The low notes resonate in the chest register, and the high notes resonate in the head and face register. And the passaggio is this tricky little spot that for a lot of people who have no vocal training, it gets stuck in the throat. So if you've ever been singing a song and it suddenly leaps up into the high notes when you were just singing low notes and your voice gets stuck or it cracks a little bit, chances are you've been caught by the passaggio. It's very frustrating, but it's not hopeless because it's a big part of what I teach in my voice lessons. And so I wanted to take this opportunity for the first podcast of August to talk about this concept of breaking through. And I'm not really going to talk about the vocal technique, and I want to focus more on the metaphor. If you're interested in learning more about the technique of the passaggio, then consider joining my Healthy Voice community. We will have 3 different live group sessions, depending on what level tier you're in, where you will have lots of opportunities to learn about breaking through the passaggio, reaching those high notes with ease, opening up into the low tones, into your chest, so that you can feel this amazing vibration deep in the chest. There is a YouTube video that I put out this week, which talks about the low notes and why we should be trying to expand down into the lower part of our register. Most people think when they go to take voice lessons that the only expansion they will be making in their range is into the high notes. But I can tell you from my own personal experience that you've got to go in the other direction too. And the reason why I say you've got to do it is because it is so worth it from an energetic perspective, a healing perspective, and just an enjoyment of life in this body perspective. Because I had never really thought about going lower. I grew up thinking that you don't do that. You just try to go higher and that's it. But when I was going through my vocal recovery and I was doing a lot of chanting and toning and mantra work, I noticed that as I started to break through into my chest register and I started to get lower, I would have these incredible spiritual experiences as well as sensorial experiences. I could feel these vibrations going deep into my chest. I started playing around with it, trying to see if I could get even lower, perhaps into my stomach. And then as I was continuing to do my sound healing practice, which uses the chakra points, and the first chakra is all the way down at the pelvic floor and the base of the spine. And so as I started trying to reach the pelvic floor with the vibrations of my voice, eventually I was able to do it. And it was an incredible experience. I felt like that chakra point was waking up. And if anybody's listening to this and they get weird about that kind of language, I don't know what to tell you. This is just how I talk. And if you really struggle, but you still want to move forward and hear what I have to say, try to think of the chakras as symbolic, which is pretty much how I do too. I just don't think it's a black or white situation. I think that we can all relate to when I say the vibration of safety, which is what the root chakra is based on. And also the pelvic floor is a pretty important part of voice work. And it's hard for a lot of people to sense down there, especially in terms of their voice. And so when I had this experience of breaking down into the pelvic floor region, into my abdomen area, feeling my vibrations, my vocal vibrations going all the way down there, that's also when the lowest part of my range started opening up. For the first time, I realized I had an extremely low range of notes. I really had no idea. So I started practicing and things started opening up for my voice, but also metaphorically from an energetic standpoint, things started opening up. And so I want to step away from this conversation about what happens when you break through these unknown territories of the voice and the body and talk about this idea of breaking through when you're on a healing journey. So I could say that I've been on a healing path since I was probably 16. That's when I became conscious of the idea that one could be on a healing journey. For some reason that I'm not entirely sure of, but I have my suspicions as to why, I started taking up an interest in alternative medicine. So this would have been in the year 1996. And so I went to the library and I checked out all the books I could find on alternative medicine. And back then, all you could really find was these very generic, almost encyclopedia type books where they break down. They'll have 2 or 3 pages on Chinese medicine, 2 or 3 pages on massage therapy, aromatherapy, yoga, tai chi, just a very, very basic general breakdown of different modalities outside the scope of Western medicine. So I read everything I could find, started subscribing to magazines that taught me how to meditate, talked to me about nutrition, started becoming interested in vegetarianism, became a vegetarian that year, started noticing some changes as I increased my intake of fresh vegetables and fruit, something that I had not really been eating because as a child and as a teenager, I grew up with a very standard American diet, despite the fact that my mom was Italian and she made all of her food had a pretty Italian bent, but we did rely on a lot of frozen vegetables and canned tomatoes. We really didn't have a lot of fresh produce in the house. But by the time I was 16, I had my own job, working at the mall after school and on the weekends. And so I could afford to buy my own groceries. And so I started buying fresh produce and making my own vegetarian dinners and lunches. And things were happening in my body. I was losing weight and I was feeling more energetic and my mind was clearing up. The depression, I started feeling as if there might be some answers on the fringes of the health world. And so I started my journey way back then. And here we are a few decades later. And so what I'd like to share with you today is based on my own personal experience. If there's something that has been different for you, it would be valuable to have your experiences in the comments section, because everybody listening to this podcast is on some kind of a healing path, and everybody's healing path is unique and different. And it's just good to know what others have gone through. I would start my path the same way I did in 1996, educating myself, learning about different modalities, learning new things about nutrition that I had not learned before, putting them into practice, taking up different exercise routines, learning different meditation techniques and putting them into daily practice, journaling, sometimes seeing a therapist, sometimes letting go of old relationships, sometimes starting new ones. And so you have to imagine, I'm a very type A person. I'm a very disciplined person. And so when I say I was doing these things on a daily basis, I mean it. And so when you do all of these healing practices on a daily basis for 6 months to a year, things start to change. Things shift. You start to break through to the other side. And now I've got that Doors song stuck in my head. But that is exactly what happens. You do this energetic shift. You start to have certain realizations about the way you've been living your life, the way you've been expressing yourself both outwardly and inwardly, the thought patterns that you have been living with on a daily basis, an hourly basis, a moment by moment basis. And you start to realize, I have to make some changes here. And changes, by the time you reach 6 months to a year of daily practice, changes have already happened. And this is very exciting when it starts to happen. But then once you reach that breaking through point, it can, in my experience, it can get very scary, because all of a sudden you realize that while it's been a lot of fun to experience the high of daily meditation and yoga, there's also the scary awarenesses that show up. The realization that you're not on a vacation when you're on a healing path. There are times where it feels ecstatic and exciting, but that's not what it's all about. There are moments when you realize that certain things happened to you that were so horrific that you had to block them out. And so a time comes in the healing path where it's time to either face the truth and keep going, or play it safe, quit, go back to all the old habits, which is exactly what I did. Every 6 months to a year, from the time around 1996 until about 2008, that's exactly what I did. I would have these breakthroughs, and then something scary would come into my awareness. A truth about somebody I cared about. A truth that maybe this person had not been so caring back to me, and that maybe I had been living in denial for a long time. And you know what happens when you realize things like that? If you make a decision to keep going with that thread of truth, your whole life has to change. You might have to change where you live. You may have to change your job. You may have to change your entire social network. I mean, these are not light things. These are life-changing consequences. And so that's why there were so many times throughout the years when I just said, oh, you know what? I'll just enjoy the meditation and the yoga, and I'll continue being in denial about the truth of this person, because it's way too inconvenient to leave them at this point. It's way too inconvenient to move, to get a new job, to fire these clients. I think I'll just change my perspective, change the language I use about these people. This person isn't abusive. He's just got a fiery temper and just knows what he wants. And sometimes he can be a little intense. But you know what? I'm doing all this meditation. I'm doing yoga. I've got this great nutrition practice. I can handle it. It's very egotistical if you think about it. It's the excuse making. You end up going into your own ego stores in order to avoid recognizing the truth of whatever it is that you are meant to face head on. And so what happened to me in 2008 was that, well, I got into a contract with somebody I should not have gotten into a contract with. And this person was, well, at the time I would have said very intense, a bit headstrong, knows what he wants, and is very passionate about making sure things happen on his terms. But once I started realizing that I was lying to myself. I got this message from my intuition. My intuition said to me, look, you can keep going the way you're going. It's fine. Like, you enjoy this high you get from breathwork and chanting and doing all these spiritual practices. Yeah, it's kind of like a drug, and it's fun. And you maintain your mental wellness a little bit every single day. You're not snapping at people. You're managing to stay loving and forgiving, and go ahead if you want to keep doing this, you want to keep living like this. But in terms of your ability to sense your intuition, time's ticking, time's up. My intuition was getting fed up with me living in this state of denial, lying to myself about the reality of this particular relationship. And I knew that I had to do something. And so I made an agreement during a meditation at one point with my intuition. I said, I realize that I'm in a very difficult situation right now. I can't move to a different location. I can't change my financial situation to where I could just leave this relationship contract. I'm kind of in a bind here, but if you can understand, I'm talking to my intuition here, if you can understand that I have the intention of living a more honest life from this point forward, and I will trust that if leaving this contract is the right thing to do, that I promise I will leave it. But let me just get used to the idea of being honest. And I felt like there was this peace made within me. And so I started becoming more honest in my journaling. So instead of doing this like really dumb thing that I think a lot of us do with like manifesting culture, where instead of writing down what's happening to you with negative terminology, I would reframe everything in positive terminology. Well, I stopped doing that after I made this agreement with myself. I started writing down how I really felt about this person. And I started letting myself think negative thoughts about this person. And I let myself really question the way this person spoke to me. I started questioning my own beliefs about myself that had been formed since the beginning of this relationship. And so within 2 years, I was gone. I finally quit that relationship. And that's when my life changed. And it was one of the hardest things that I went through. And I started having a lot of what I would call my post-traumatic stress symptoms. I had them long before that, but because I was allowing myself to be honest about a very harmful relationship, the symptoms came at me like a tsunami. I mean, I felt like I was, I felt like I was living my life for about 1.5 years in a complete daze, where I only had enough energy to get myself into a new apartment, figure out my financial situation, just enough energy to survive. I would drag myself to my piano lessons. I found it to be kind of a miracle that people were still calling me for piano lessons, because my energy was so bad. I mean, I didn't know why anybody wanted to be around me. I felt so rotten all the time. But I woke up every day telling myself, I'm going to face the truth of what's happened. I stopped doing anything intoxicant related. I would drink a little bit of wine every now and then, but I stopped doing any cannabis. I even quit. I had been on Zoloft for about 6 months, and I made sure to quit that before I left the situation. And I knew at the time that if I had stayed with those substances, I probably would have maybe been feeling a little better in the moment. But I felt like I had been avoiding that type of suffering for so long, and that avoidance was actually what put me in the situation of that relationship to begin with. I hope I'm making sense here. What I'm saying is, by constantly desiring to feel good, I put myself into a state of denial. I refused to use any kind of negative language, both in my thoughts and my speech, in order to convince myself that everything was fine just the way it was, while simultaneously living this spiritual healing path type of life every single day, doing all kinds of healing practices to try and heal the blocks that I had, while simultaneously denying the truth of very real people in my life who were causing very real harm to me. And that's, to me, having any kind of an addiction, whether it's food or TV or scrolling screen stuff or drugs of any kind or alcohol, is a form of denying the truth of what's really hurting you, what's really bothering you. It's because there's something you're afraid, or in my opinion, I was afraid of what would happen if I faced the truth. I couldn't really say what I was afraid of. I just had this feeling that if I faced the truth of my relationships with people, that my whole world would fall apart. And I was 100% right. My world did fall apart, and it was really hard for multiple years. This was around the time when this happened to me, was when I lost my ability to perform. So if you think about it, my life falling apart, it's not such a dramatic exaggeration. All I cared about in my life growing up was being able to sing in front of people and with people. It's the only way I wanted to connect with others. I loved having musician friends, and I loved performing in front of audiences. And when I finally decided to face the truth and start my life over, suddenly I lost my nerve and I lost my ability to sing. So I paid a huge price in facing the truth. And it was awful. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was absolute hell for a while, for a long time, actually. But I knew that this commitment to truth, this commitment to being honest about what I had been through, and when I say that, I mean honest with myself, because that's really where the biggest denial was happening. I knew that it was going to lead to something great. And so I took my punishment, which I know that's not really the right way to think about it, but it kind of felt like that. I felt like I was getting punished in a way for not being honest for so long, which I know isn't really a healthy way to look at things. But I just decided to power through and keep going. And that journey, that was a journey I didn't quit. So that was the moment when I finally kept going. I didn't stop. So up until that point, like I said, I would be really serious and committed to my healing path every single day, every moment of every day. And it would last anywhere from 6 months to a year. And then something would happen where I would be invited to face the truth, the reality, the truth of my own personal reality, meaning the relationships that I was in, the work situation, all of it. I had to face the truth. And that's when I went, oh, no, thank you. And resorted back to my overeating habits, taking certain intoxicants, allowing people to be very rude to me, and accepting the blame for things that I didn't do. So allowing hits to my self-esteem and rationalizing them as being totally justified. I stopped doing that once I left that relationship. Making a decision to turn my life upside down like that in the name of truth, I think it sent a signal to my higher self that I was holding up my end of the bargain that I had made just a couple years before. That if I continue to be, if I get honest with myself, my intuition will stay put, it will not leave me, and it will get stronger and stronger. And that's exactly what happened. And I never stopped, which meant I had to go through some pretty intense periods. I remember one time I was doing this, I went through a phase where I was doing a lot of breathwork sessions, and I would go to this breathwork instructor where he would have these group sessions. And I mean, it was really incredible. And I was going every week for a while, and you do this breathwork practice that feels like it feels like you're tripping on some kind of psychedelic. And I've never actually done psychedelics, but it seems like that's what's happening based on what I've read. And it can be really scary. but you go into it willingly because you want to uncover the hard truths about your reality so that you can move past them. So I was doing this every week for a while, and it was pretty intense. I would go home feeling exhausted and a little bit lighter, but also a little bit sad because I had to face the truth about certain things that I had been spending my whole life in denial of. But I kept going. I kept doing that. Started going to hot yoga classes, also extremely intense. When you put your body through intense states, you can have these realizations that are similar to what people describe in these ayahuasca ceremonies, where you have all these repressed memories show up and you just got to face them. You got to deal with them. And eventually I started using sound healing on a daily basis with my voice. And that was the thing that helped me recover my voice and my ability to use my voice in front of other people, which is how I got the courage to start the Healthy Voice. So I kind of rushed through that whole process. But what I just described to you, the point where I decided to really look honestly at that contract I had signed with this other human being, to the point where I was clear enough, strong enough to start a business that required me to start a YouTube channel and do these live sessions with people I didn't know before, to be fully present online like this. It took something like 15 years. It took a long time. And one of the motivations I have every day as I think about what to create for the Healthy Voice, whether it's the community or the YouTube channel or Substack or my private clients, is what can I do today to help somebody not, I want to be careful with my words here. I want to say lose 15 years of their life. I didn't lose 15 years of my life. There were a lot of great things that happened during those 15 years. And the healing journey can actually be a lot of fun when you put yourself out there to face your fears, to challenge yourself, to stand up to your fears. It can be quite exhilarating and exciting. I traveled a lot. I traveled to foreign countries during that period of time, something I had never done before. I learned how to talk to strangers. I learned how to share my opinions with people who didn't agree with me and stay calm and grounded. I learned a lot about various spiritual practices and nutrition techniques, and I learned so much. So I didn't lose 15 years, but it was definitely 15 years where I didn't have the ability to use my voice freely. And so my motivation for working on the Healthy Voice every day is to share what I know, share what I've learned, so that other people can get through this process a little faster than I did. When I think about that number, 15 years, I think, that's a long time. That's a really long time. So if I could help somebody cut that number down significantly, then I feel really good. And I feel like it was all worth it. And that's a great feeling. Every time somebody sends me an email thanking me for the voice liberation method or the Healthy Voice community, or even if I just see a really nice comment on my YouTube channel, it makes me feel like it was all worth it. Like, it's an amazing feeling. It's kind of like when you have a really intense dream and it's so stressful and it seems like it goes on all night long. And then you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I'm so glad that's over. But then you also learn something from the dream. The dream was there to tell you something. That's kind of what my life feels like right now. I feel like it was all a really intense dream that lasted a really long time. But wow, what a relief that it's over. And it actually provided a lot of important information. And so I'm grateful for it. So, okay, I'm going to stop here. I hope that you enjoyed this little storytelling hour, and I hope you gained something from it. I hope it inspired you to keep going. This is one of the reasons now you probably understand why I say keep going, because the world needs your unique voice, because I understand that it's so tempting to quit all the time. Wouldn't it be so much better to just sit in front of your TV or your screen and just watch stupid movies and stupid TV shows and eat junk food and, complain about everything? And wouldn't it be so much easier to just sit around angry all the time and blame the people that hurt you and feel like a victim all day long? Wouldn't it be easier? It would. There are a lot of times where it's so tempting to fall into that pattern. And that's basically what would happen whenever I would break the flow, those 6 months to 1 year. Whenever I would quit, that's basically what happened. I just described my little breaking points where I would just spend several months just feeling like a victim and gaining weight and being really lazy and letting myself go, like not caring about anything, or maybe caring too much about things that didn't matter. But that's not the way. Like if you think about your whole life as this adventure, this journey, that you've got to have difficult moments. And if you can face these moments bravely, then what you have instead is a story like an adventure tale, like a Lord of the Rings or Wizard of Oz type of story, a hero's journey. That's why I use the hero's journey as a template in my voice liberation method, because it's so much more exciting to think of your life as an adventure story, because every great hero has days when it loses a battle, when something really bad happens. Sometimes in these adventure stories, people die. Sometimes the hero loses somebody who was pivotal in their journey, someone they loved and cared about, somebody who assisted them, and this person is gone. Or sometimes they lose somebody to the other side, the evil side takes them. Or sometimes they lose the directions, they lose their way, and they get sideswept into a not so great path. But the story must go on, and the hero always gets back on track. And that's how I prefer to see life, and that's how I prefer to see this healing path. It's a hero's journey. And so you're not going to have victories all the time, but we don't let those victories send us back home without a fight. We keep going until we get that ring, or we get those ruby slippers, and we find our way back home to Kansas. And then we start the whole journey all over again. It never ends, And if we can just see it like that, it can make the adventure story a little bit more fun. And what I'm trying to offer here is voice exercises. I mean, to me, it's like the most amazing way to be on the healing path is I get to sing. I get to use my voice. What? I get to read monologues that I create for the Healthy Voice community. And I mean, can you think of any other kind of way to make it fun in this healing path? That's what I'm trying to do here also, is I'm trying to make it fun. I've always been trying to make it fun for myself. Now I'm just sharing it with other people. So if you're interested in any of these offerings, just check out the links in the description, and don't forget to subscribe to my Substack or my YouTube channel, or both. If you're listening to this elsewhere, I know a lot of you listen on Apple Podcast. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review. I think the last time I checked my Apple Podcast page, I didn't see any reviews. So if you would be so inclined, I would appreciate it. It really helps to get this message growing, which I do feel like that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to share some information that a lot of people have never really thought about before. They've never considered it, but I can tell you that all the people who've been working with me, especially the ones who started out with me about 7 months ago, big changes, big difference. It's making a difference in their lives, and it's so beautiful for me to watch it happen in real time. It's so great. So I hope you'll join me on any of these adventures, regardless of the platform, regardless of whether it's free or fee-based. Check it out, and I'll see you guys in the next YouTube video, and talk to you later.